Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and tonight we are talking about season 14. What was essential? What did we love? What did we hate? What could we do without? We're going to duke it out here in the Fight Club. But before we start swinging punches, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Melissa.
I always get caught off guard when you start with me. Hi, I'm Melissa. I have been a fan of the show since the pilot originally aired, and you can find me online on Facebook on the PFWNC Supernatural group that Gail moderates.
Awesome. Lola?
Well, I've been a fan of the show since 2005. I mean, I already watched just about everything CW, so it wasn't hard for me to glom onto. And I'm also on the Facebook group that Gail moderates, and I'm going to be fun tonight because I misread the instructions and I got episodes from all over the 15th season. So you're going to see me going on Wikipedia like, oh, I don't know.
That's okay. We all do it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Carole, how about you?
I'm Carole Stokes. I've been a fan of the show since season 3. I'm a fanfic writer. All my fan fiction is on AO3 under Fire Sign 10.
And Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I write short stories. And I've been a fan of the show since the pilot.
Okay. And I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, and more. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male, paranormal, romance, but all the modern day worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. And as a couple people have mentioned, I moderate the Supernatural TFWNC Facebook group, as well as the Supernatural track and others here on Continual. So season 14, we're starting to come down to the end. We've got a major thread with Dean being possessed by Michael, because that's how we ended season 13, to save Sammy and Jack. And so we've got Dean looking very natty as Michael, and also trying to destroy the world. So what were your favorite, let's start with favorites. What did you love most about this season? Lola?
Wikipedia is my friend. There's one called Lebanon, because I love that, because that's like, isn't that the name of the town they're in, or one of the towns in Kansas?
Yes.
So that automatically, I'm like, Lebanon, I know that. And it goes back, it's a hunter friend of theirs who's been murdered, and it has occult items, which I always find really interesting. And it is something about Dean is now a serial killer, and it's just all this stuff, like all this fantasy type stuff, and I love that stuff.
Well, and it brings back that all those pilfered relics end up bringing back John Winchester, at least for dinner.
Yeah.
Well, and we discover that what Dean's heart really wants is not to solve his current problem, but just to have his family back together.
Perfect for Christmas.
Very Dean kind of thing. Carole, how about you?
I had a few episodes that I liked. I really enjoyed Mint Condition, where we see Fanboy Dean again, because Fanboy Dean is always so amusing. And of course he is there. Of course I loved Lebanon and seeing John and Mary and Sam and Dean all together, and not only seeing them all together, but especially for Sam and Dean being able to put to rest the demons of their past in terms of John's A+ parenting and the difficult life they led as they were growing up. So that was really, really, really nice to watch. It was very nicely done. I totally also enjoyed Peace of Mind, where we see Sam kind of revert to this 1950s husband with his little cardigan and his little horn-rimmed glasses and going, "Rawr." He had a lot of fun with that, and I had a lot of fun watching him do that. And gosh, I think that was about it for the ones I really, really enjoyed.
Okay.
Others had
Electra.
moments, but yeah.
How about you, Electra?
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you over there.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, and I like totally different ones, so this is going to be interesting. I really liked Optimism because the whole librarian is a necromancer and has a zombie boyfriend thing was just too silly. And I really enjoyed having that on one side and then having Sam and Charlie just sitting there in a truck and talking while they're on a stakeout and there's nothing happening and we're discovering just why Charlie from Any World is a really, really good hunter. I really liked Byzantium, where we get to see what the heck is going on in heaven and why heaven's a problem. And we pick up all the interesting pieces. That's where we see Castiel's deal with the empty. And we get to see what's going on with Lily Sunder comes back and Anubis comes back. There are all sorts of really good visits from old friends in there that I super enjoyed. And other than Lebanon, I think those were my two favorites from the season.
Okay. Melissa.
Sorry about that. I don't know if I have favorite episodes as much as favorite moments. Gee, stealing that from somebody from the con this weekend.
Who would that be?
Unhuman Nature, because we get that moment where the Jack and Dean bond, because Jack, he's leaving and Dean's like, wait a minute, let me understand. And Jack wants to go have some of those iconic moments. And so, you know, that Dean really cares about Jack because he lets him drive the car. He teaches Jack how to drive in Baby and then tells him to just go for it when they've got a nice stretch of open road. Like, I'm sorry, but if that's not love from Dean Winchester, I don't know what is. So that's one of those great moments. And then Damaged Goods, because Sam is trying to, you know, Dean goes on his end of life world tour and we get that great hug with Sam, and you get Sam trying to argue with him about the Malik box. So those are some really good moments. I am going to be the outlier here and say I don't like Lebanon. I have deep and bitter resentment, or I have strong feelings about John Winchester's parenting, and I don't think that just magically showing up for a fake Thanksgiving dinner really. I'm glad that the boys get some resolution, but it doesn't make it up for me. So I'll be the outlier on that one.
That's perfectly okay. That's what we're here to duke it out. I love Mint Condition because I love to see Fanboy Dean. I love it's time to slice and dice. And I love seeing Sam really nerd out with the girl in the comic book store and builds a bomb out of a lunchbox, and, you know, really kind of just, I had a messed up childhood. You know, I just thought that was a fun episode in an otherwise very angsty season. There was a lot about Lebanon that I liked, especially from Sam's perspective of being able, you know, he got sent off for coffee and came back and John was dead. He never got to say goodbye. The last thing they did was fight. That leaves a wound, and he got closure. And they both got to hear that while John was certainly not Father of the Year, he loved them and he was proud of them. And both boys were just so hungry for that, even at their age. Seeing them get that was so important. I also liked Profit and Loss because that's the one where Sam just snaps and takes a swing at Dean and just goes off on him on, why are you giving up on us? And Dean eventually caves in because it's Sammy, and he always does. And I know that was a really hard scene for Jared to play, but it paid off because that's just a gorgeous bro hug and moment in the series. And then game night, because I'm a sucker for any time Sam dies and comes back, because we get to see what it does to Dean. And in this case, Nick / Lucifer gets out of the handcuffs. Didn't you know he was going to do that? And smacks Sammy with the rock. And after all the time Sam gets his head hit, this time it takes. And fortunately, Jack shows up to save the day. But just that scene, and then Dean's reaction, the way he just sort of gets up and turns away because he doesn't want anybody to see how utterly wrecked he is. Just, that was such great acting on Jensen's part, and so natural and so Dean, that I just love those. So
I hate game night, by the way.
You hate game night.
Every time I see the end of that and I watch Mary disappear, it kills me, because they just did not have her for long enough. I mean, it's important to the continuity of the series that you see what happens and why Jack does it, but it kills me every time. And I can't say I like that episode. The Lucifer gets what he wants and then he doesn't, or Nick gets what he wants and then discovers wanting and having are not the same thing before he's supposed. And then Mary tries to discipline Jack and tell him, no, you have to do the right thing. And Jack just is like, strikes out. And that's the end of Mary. Easy come, easy go. It's like, no, that was Mary. We want to keep her.
Yeah, and that's one of those where it certainly proves that Mary never had teenagers, because you don't do that to teenagers. And all the times that Jack got angry, like when they later try to stuff him in the Malak box and he blows the box apart and we have that confrontation where he just makes everybody floaty in the orange light. Why he dematerialized Mary is just one of those, well, this was the writers not being consistent, but they wanted the angst. He should have just made her orange and floaty like he did everybody else, because he obviously had that ability. So it's one of those non sequiturs that, just kind of, you had to go there just to amp up the anxiety. But who else has one that, or several that you just can't stand?
Oh, that we can't stand?
Or that you don't like, or just weren't your favorites?
I got tired of the AU people. They kind of just kept getting shuffled around. And then AU Bobby and Mary go off and check up in the woods.
What's up with that?
And then she comes back and has a reaction with John.
Yeah, it was, that stuff
That was
wasn't
creepy.
so great. The teenagers that we saw in Lebanon, and then we see them again, they were annoying.
I was so afraid that they were going to be the new cousin Oscar and they were going to stick around.
Oh, it just,
Dippy teenagers.
I felt there was a lot of just being all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in heaven. Now we see Duma, and now we're dealing with Nick, and now we're back in heaven. Oh, look, there's Naomi, and Mary's here, she's gone. Here's an AU hunter. Oh, no, it just was like it couldn't figure itself out. Even the Monsters of the Week episodes, which traditionally tend to be stronger when you have a weaker arc, and I did not feel that this was a strong arc. But even those were kind of like Sam and Charlie hunt a man fly, a Gorgon appears and they kill it and that's it. Um,
I liked the man fly. It was just so bad it was kind of good. You know, with the whole big widow's weeds over its big fly head. I was expecting
could they not
maybe
even
Jeffrey Goldblum.
could they not even cough up a fake fly head that they had to? I mean, where'd the budget go on that one?
No, the joy of that was Sam and Charlie sitting around talking. The monster was completely irrelevant.
But that's what I'm saying. You know,
anything.
even in past seasons, at least the monsters of the week have been, you know, kind of zippy or zesty or whatever. And even here, a lot of them were like, you know.
Well, my nominee for bad monster of the week goes to the Native American monster that was created by the Native Americans so that they could keep everybody out of their woods. That made no sense at all. Oh, what episode was that?
And it obviously wasn't extremely effective.
Well, it was a while ago because they marked woods, but years and years and years go by and the markings in the woods disappeared and the monster's still there. And he was a guy they wanted to punish by making him forever hungry because he like cannibalized his family because it was a hard winter. And it was, so you punished him by making the woods off limits to everybody. So nobody could go hunting there. That doesn't make sense. Even in it was 100 years ago, back when people would want to go hunting in the woods. It didn't make sense then. And then the one guy who knew what it was didn't want to let anybody go in there to kill it.
Okay.
I'm just going to pretend it's a rabid coyote and tell everybody not to go in the woods until the monster gets tired and goes away. Yeah, that was super lame.
Okay. Melissa?
I am so very over Lucifer Nick this season. I was just, all right, come up, can't you come? We're spinning the wheel of plot again with, okay, what can we do this time? Lucifer, let's bring Lucifer back. Hey, everybody. No, please stop. Come up with new, they could have come up with a new big bad for this season. They didn't need to drag Lucifer and Nick through all this. Although I will say that there was in Stranger in a Strange Land, when Sam is taking care of Nick because he's injured, that was for me one of the bravest moments in Sam's of the entire show, because yes, we know it's Nick, but Sam was in the cage for so long, and I'm sorry, there's no way you can separate this as the human versus this as Lucifer, and he does it. And I'm like, why is no one else doing this? Why does this fall to Sam? And yet Sam does it. And Jared does such a great job of acting, because you can tell he's afraid. You can tell that Sam is afraid, but you can also see him reaching down deep and pulling out the strength to do it. And that scene in Stranger in Strangeland, I love, because it's just great acting and just really tells us who Sam is.
And that makes it all the more poignant in game night when Sam finally has tried so hard and finally just tells Nick, "You're done. I'm done with you." And I agree with you. Elektra.
I will agree with Melissa that we did not need another round with Lucifer, but by the same token, I really appreciate them taking Nick back to Delaware and showing him what really happened to his family. Although it's upsetting to see that his wife's ghost is still there, because Nick has still unfinished business for her. And that he finds out what happened to his family. And then his response to that is to kill the guy that tells him. He goes and he finds the cop that murdered his family. And the guy says, Abraxas made me do it. And he kills the cop. And he's chasing all this down, and then we find out that it's just Nick who cannot deal without Lucifer, and he wanted this all along, and that he's just damaged. And that he was never just a happy guy with a wife and a kid that this happened to. He was a psychopath from the beginning.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we didn't know why it happened to him and why he was Lucifer's vessel. And now we know.
Mm-hmm.
But that could have been taken care of in an episode and a half, honestly.
That's true. Lola, any thoughts?
I didn't really like what they did to Jack's character, because we saw him be born, and it's like, oh, he's half Lucifer, half human, googly googly, how cute, and then he's a menace to society. I'm like, I didn't really like that too much.
Yeah, I kind of thought that there was a lot of overreaction to the whole snake thing, given how many people collectively the rest of them have offed. You'd think you could have sat him down and said, okay, dematerializing people and snakes is not a good thing. Can you rein that in? But that's one of those, the writers needed to get to a certain point, so the writers got to a certain point. And
Well, the problem wasn't that he dematerialized the snake so much as by that point he didn't have a soul, and Cass didn't want to tell anybody he didn't have a soul. And they hadn't figured it out because Cass was telling Sam and Dean that he was okay.
where have we seen that happen before? Where Cass didn't tell people someone didn't have a soul? Sam. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, he didn't seem to be as good at detecting it early on. Early on, he had to do the I'm going to stick my hand into you thing to figure it out, but he seems to have gotten better at it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're just like not being consistent again, because we've never seen the writers do that before. But
Or
he figured out that Jack had burned off all of his soul and he didn't share. So they didn't know what they were working with. And now that we are all on the same page, now we have to figure out how to deal with soulless Jack, because we've dealt with soulless Sam, and we know that this is scary shit.
Yeah.
And yet,
Well, maybe they didn't have the special effects budget for him to shove his hand in Jack, the glowy light.
and yet here they were with when they did figure out that Jack was soulless, and Sam is right there, who has been soulless. But do they draw on Sam's experience? No, they take him off to go see Donatello.
Well,
and
Sam
here's
wasn't
another.
very good at it. Honestly,
But at what?
Sam wasn't very good at soulless. Sam was like a great
nobody's
hunter
good
while
at
he was
soul-
soulless, and he ran
Nobody's
around
good at it.
killing
Nobody's
people.
good at soulless because they don't have a soul. So they don't give a shit.
No, Sam ran around being like the best hunter ever because he was dispassionately using people and killing monsters. And he decided it was to his benefit to let Dean become a vampire so they could track down the nest, because we can just cure him later. And if we don't, well, oh, well, at least we got the nest.
But they could at least at this point, when Sam now fully resold, could talk about what it was like and stuff. And but it was like I didn't care what they did I didn't care for what they did to Donatello in the first place. I thought he was an interesting character, and he was the actor who played him was just terrific. He's a really great character actor.
He's Sarah Bachka.
And they just squandered it. He's in a coma and making prophets go crazy, and then he's dragging him out for the whole soulless thing and everything. And it just was like, why are you driving halfway across the country to talk to him when Sam's right there in the bunker?
Or Sam could have tried to talk to Jack about what it was like being soulless. And Dean could have very quickly realized, you know what, buddy, maybe considering some of the things you did, you're not the best point.
That would
and
totally
now
work.
we need to go to Donatello.
That totally would have worked. I think in these later seasons, I'd say certainly starting with 13, if not sooner, Supernatural writers suffered from two-sentence itis, where they had numerous instances where if they had written 2 sentences, things that looked ridiculous or took these leaps of faith that we had no faith in to take would have been explained. You know, why did this happen?
They're missing the stitching.
Yeah, here's your 2 sentences to set that up. And everyone would have been like, oh, well, that makes sense, you know, but they don't. Or if they had them, then they edited them out. And so that editor needs to be smacked.
I would have loved to have seen Sam sit down with Jack, not only to describe the soullessness, but to say, I spent a couple of millennia with your dad. Let me tell you what he's really like. Because Jack deserved to know that. And, you know, it would be irresponsible to send a kid off with a parent that everybody else knows is abusive and not tell the kid, even if they're an adult kid. And I thought that Sam kind of owed it to Jack. You're not prejudicing Jack. It's the friggin' devil. He needs to know.
He has a track record.
Good point.
Yeah, so I kept waiting for that to happen, but it didn't. What did you think about the whole Dean Michael arc the whole way through this season? Because that was the biggie. Anybody jump in?
You know, I like the way they acted it, but I thought it was a little idea poor. I mean, Michael couldn't come up with a better idea than to amp up some werewolves and vampires and try and make them more indestructible so he could take over the world. I mean, it seems a little less interesting. I mean, haven't the monsters been trying to do that all along?
Well, it was just like Eve. You know, we saw this happening with Eve. So here we have the recycled storyline again. Oh, let's make up some new monsters. You know, just none of them got snazzy names like Jefferson Starships.
Or werepires.
Werepires, ghoulpires. So, you know, I didn't care. I mean, certainly every time Dean is Michael, he's stunning. He's in the natty clothes. He's very dapper, you know, even when he's like carving up vampires and he's got that leather butcher apron over his dress shirt and everything. He's very, you know, very on point. I got tired of, I even kind of liked when he bamboozled the lady vampire who thought they were going to have, you know, elegant sex in his elegant penthouse after the elegant event they had been to. And he's like, haha, joke's on you. But I didn't like the whole idea of this. He left a back door open in Dean's brain. What? When did that ever happen? And since when did angels leave these back doors open? The whole point of a vessel was that the angel had to get permission. And I'll even grant you fine, Dean had given him permission once, but that permission had been revoked. And I don't think you get to just say, well, I left this little mouse door open at the bottom of the basement and I just snuck on in. It didn't fly with me.
I left a password protected back door. I knew the password so I could get back in.
Yeah, it was 11111.
Computer code.
They left your credit card in the lock to keep it from locking.
Yes, that did not make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, we did get Rocky's Bar. With
I loved Rocky's Bar. Oh my God, that was fantastic.
The family business brewing tabs and that monkey thing that showed up all 15 years and
Pamela.
And
Pamela.
Mhm.
Drinking tequila with Pamela. Can't go wrong there.
Sounds like a good song. Drinking
Yeah.
Tequila with Pamela.
But
Oh,
Reynolds
nice.
Coffee Bar is pretty cool.
Okay, one
Uh,
thing we haven't hit on yet is that, especially those of us here are writers, Chuck hitting that piece of it right at the end, well, I lied, writers lie. That hit me right in the breadbasket. While I was busy just saying, wait, haven't we seen pieces of this before? I'm mad at you guys, so I'm going to throw even more shit at you because I haven't thrown enough shit at you again. I'll give you a weapon and then, well, it won't work quite the way I say because, well, I'm Chuck and I do whatever I want. And all of the whiny stuff that happened all through that last episode.
yeah, when you
There's
consider
not enough cheese in the world for that wine.
when you
Well,
consider
and-
where we had left off with Chuck, where he was presumably reasonably happy hanging out with his sister, and all of a sudden he comes back this really angry little person and starts clubbing at everything with anything he can. Like, where did that happen? Like, what? Once again, where was the catalyst for the change in his
Well,
actions and
because
personality?
he set up this season to do what he wanted and then he disappeared and it didn't work out the way he wanted. And he still wants his epic battle between Sam and Dean, and he's not getting it because, it's his favorite channel.
Well,
And
and
everybody knows that.
it's true that writers lie, but good writers at least have to lie within the rules. You can't just make up anything you want unless you've laid down the rules and you're deceiving people within that so they can look back and go, I should have seen that coming. This one just pulled stuff out of, let's be polite and say, thin air.
I said it for you. I said the real thing for you.
Yes, you did. Thank you. And that didn't have rules. And so that's where you start looking at this going, wait, that wasn't fair by how it's supposed to work. We should have been able to see this coming. And yeah, they did that a lot. So let's look at what the essentials were according to Entertainment Weekly and argue about it. So let's see. Nihilism, which is Michael locked in the freezer. Lebanon, certainly a memorable episode. Absence, which is when Mary dies. And Mariah, we get 4 episodes out of 20. And of course, Mariah was the whole showdown in the cemetery with Isaac, Abraham and Isaac and the equalizer and the Thanos snap. But what do you think? Are those the 4 you would have picked as being essential? Melissa?
While I don't love this episode, I don't think you can get to one of the episodes in season 15 without Byzantium, however you say it, because that's where Cass makes the deal with the empty. And
right.
you have to have that scene because 18 won't make sense without that scene. So the fact that they left that off, it wasn't a great episode, and you could have left the rest of the episode out without that critical scene, but I don't think you can get from A to B without it.
Well,
so I'm surprised they left it out.
Yeah, you had to save Jack. And you are assuming that even with it, 15-18 makes sense. But that's an argument for another panel. But yeah, that was the mechanism for saving Jack, but let's not tell anybody. Yeah, Elektra.
I also think that you need one of the earlier ones in the season to let people know how you got out of the last season. And when I looked at that, I said, well, the first 2, I think you can maybe skip, but I think you at least need the scar to let people know what's going on. Otherwise, the whole season just isn't going to the throughput on the season doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't pick one of the first three. And that was my favorite of the first three. That one explains a little bit about what's going on with Kaya and Jack not being quite right, and why Michael jumped out of Dean. And they go back and they explain that, because otherwise you've left the last season and you don't know why Michael isn't in Dean anymore. So that's an important piece.
Okay, Lola? You're muted.
Did they say game night?
No.
I would say game night just because you see what happens to Mary. It's very sad, but it's a definitive moment.
Yeah. And
I would say game night as opposed to absence.
Mhm.
Where you see what happens rather than the aftermath, but that's a preference thing.
And I still say that if they'd have let us see those moments that were part of her send-off, that were tender and bonding with the boys and being with them, if we'd have seen that earlier, we would have liked her better and actually cared when she died. But we only
Right.
saw, abandonment Mary, and we didn't see those tender moments until they were pushing her out the door. And I think that was a real oversight, because we didn't care as much as if we'd have seen those along the way.
And it feels so manipulative. It's so blatantly, we're going to soften you up because now we're going to, ice her.
Yeah. And so everything else ended up as a non-essential. And let me just check and see if we had any big music. What was that? Till It Shines from Bob Seger.
I would debate on the essential that
Okay.
I would go with the first one just to get the setup going.
Mm-hmm.
I would go with, I agree with nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
I would put in, and I can never say this word, Ouroboros,
Mm-hmm.
because we have the AU hunters all get killed. Jack destroys Michael and gets his grace and becomes a full-fledged Nephilim again. He gets his power back.
Mhm.
And that's a huge, huge moment. That all this season up until, we're 2/3 of the way through the season, and all of a sudden finally Jack is full power again, and then from there to go to Mariah.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think, I just feel like that one should be in there somewhere, because we get Michael off the board for good, and have, important things happen with Jack and stuff.
Where now is Jack is full powered, but still soulless.
Yes.
There's an important distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Any others on the essentials versus non-essentials? I've just got to mention a couple of the music is always such a big thing with Supernatural. And in the 4 episodes that they considered essential, one of the ones that really stuck out to me was Till It Shines by Bob Seger in the Lebanon episode. And that's just kind of a perfect song there. They did such a great job with music. And of course, God Was Never on Your Side by Motorhead in Mariah, just perfect.
Perfect.
Some of the weirder ones, there was Staying Alive by the Bee Gees in Optimism. And Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head in Game Night. Not one of those songs you think you immediately identify with Supernatural. But they were just weird enough choices. I had to mention those because, yeah.
I remember at the time thinking Raindrops was a really strange choice.
It's a strange choice no matter where you put it, because just sort of a weird one. Final thoughts on season 14, because as usual, we've blown through our time.
This was not the strongest season.
It's not, but it's a really strong setup for season 15, because now you have all the pieces set up for what's going to be a really kick-ass final season, even with all the problems.
I did
But
really
then
like
all we
that-
really
I'm sorry.
go.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I did really like at the end. I'll thumb wrestle you. At the end, that scene in the cemetery is fantastic. Things are approaching them. They're all back to back. Melissa's dittoing. That was a terrific ending shot, and I was like on the edge of my seat. So that was it. It did end with a bang.
Melissa?
That really was what I was going to say. So once again, Carole stole my words. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
Lola?
Why I have the sign.
I still don't like what they did with Jack's character. It felt a bit like it was biding its time till it figured out what it was going to do, which was season 15.
Yeah. And I'll agree that season 14 wasn't perfect, but it wasn't season 8. And we can say that for it.
Or season 7.
This is true.
Dear God, it wasn't full of leviathans. It could be worse.
And no Amelia.
Leviathan.
I hated the Leviathans. That just annoyed
Let's
me.
feed Amelia to the Leviathans.
That would have been great. Yeah, I would. I like
saying.
that.
Yeah. Well,
You know.
folks, once again, we've blown through all our time, but it goes so fast. Thank you so much for being here. And let's go around and let everybody know where they can find you. Carole?
I'm here on Continual and in the TFWNC Facebook group as Carole Stokes. I'm on WordPress and on AO3 as Fiery Sign 10. All my fiction is on AO3. And on Twitter, you can find me as true_Fiery Sign 10.
Awesome. Melissa?
You can find me stalking folks on the TFWNC Supernatural group and participating in Supernatural panels here on Continual.
Nice. Elektra?
You can find everything about me at untilmidnight.com, and I'm going to be reading on KWH live at some point, and I will put it up on the website. So if anybody wants to actually hear me read for a couple of minutes, I will let everybody know when.
Nice. Congratulations. Lola?
Well, I accidentally left my birth name on my thing, so ignore that. You don't see that. My preferred name is Lola Larisy, Lariscy, and you can find me just about anywhere, and I'm just always around.
Awesome. I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. All the social media is a variation of that, or the Supernatural TFWNC group. But mostly I'm here on Continual. So thank you very, very much, all my wonderful, wonderful panelists, for another great Fight Club. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more Supernatural coming up soon. So we'll see you online.